Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Better Learning Podcast. I am Jeff Kubiak, along with Carla Cummins, and today we have the amazing leader from the Desert Sands Unified School District, all the way in beautiful, sunny La Quinta, California, and that's Dr. Kelly May-Vollmar. Dr. Vollmar, or Dr. May-Vollmar, thank you so much for being with us, and welcome.
Thank you.
So Dr. Vollmar is the superintendent of this amazing school district in sunny Southern California. And before we get into too much, at K-12, we really like to talk about what is radically student-centered. So don't have to answer that at the moment, but we want to, before we let you go today, we want to get your idea of what radically student-centered means to you, your work, and your purpose. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Dr. Vollmar, what's a belief about education that you've had to unlearn?
Wow, a belief about education that I've had to unlearn. That is really a fantastic question. I think one of the things we work on a lot in our district is that education is not for or about the adults in the organization, that it's really about the kids, right? And so that's something that I think a lot of us really need to unlearn, right? We tend to design things for either what we did or what we would want. We really need to be designing them for students and what they need and what they want.
I love that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And Jeff, I'm sorry. I'm totally going to interrupt you because I just am sitting here thinking, I think there's, no matter what path you take when it comes to serving the educational community, there comes a time where there's this light bulb moment, right? That's like, golly, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And I know, I could tell you mine, and I didn't choose it. Someone chose it for me, and then it was just like, this is where I should be, and they were right?
Yeah.
So what led you to where you are? It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be anything, but I'm always curious because I think your role is one of the hardest, and I don't know that people recognize that. So just out of curiosity.
Yeah. Kind of a twofold answer, right? Because one's the superintendent job and one's just education in general. So really interesting. I started off as a volunteer art teacher in my daughter's first grade classroom. And then pretty soon I was doing it for the whole first grade. And I thought, what am I doing? I should just be a teacher, right? And I love it. But I have a sticker on I have a name plaque, right, on my desk, like a lot of people do. And I have a sticker that says, because I get to. And I really feel that way about the job. But it wasn't until, the first year you feel like you're kind of drinking from a fire hydrant as a brand new superintendent. And then it gets a little bit easier, but there's a lot of hard things that we deal with. And so it was probably about the middle of or beginning of year 2 where I thought, I'm so excited. I asked someone to hire me for this job. So I don't ever want to lose that sense of I get to do this work. And it really is a privilege and an honor. And so I have that sticker on my desk and I keep it there to try and keep me grounded in that thought.
Yeah. Well, thank you for answering that. It's not to like derail your thought process, Jeff, but I always just wonder, because I think that it's deep, it's meaningful work, right? And it's not always rewarding. You feel like it's sort of like parenthood, right? Where it's just not there. So just out of curiosity we went into that question.
And I think that's great. I taught and was an assistant principal and a principal for over 24 years. My mom taught for 40 years. And there's a lot of things that shape us as educators, right? So your leadership, what would maybe the or one or two core beliefs about children really drive your decisions?
So one of the things that is key, and I think it'll probably come up over and over again as we talk, I would imagine it usually does. I mentioned earlier that we need to be building things for kids. I deeply, deeply believe that children have to have a voice in this process. And so we build a lot of things to give students voice. I had an event this morning where I was out at one of the high schools and I had the whole associated student body leadership team standing there talking to me. And I just said, tell me what we can do better. What do you need? What can we do better? Because I want to empower students to be a part of this process, not just to know they can, but actually be a part of it. Their voice is so powerful. And so that drives most of what I do.
That's beautiful. The basis of the of the work that we do at K-12, and it's been mission driven, is really focusing on that student empowerment and student agency, right? And we work with so many incredible schools and architects and designers and people like yourself that when you allow the opportunity for students to have the voice, the choice to drive change, you see the most incredible things happen.
Yes, absolutely. I was just talking with one of my assistant superintendents a little bit earlier. We do a climate and culture survey every year, like a lot of schools do. And a lot of them are canned, if you will, questions. But we added some open-ended questions this year, and we got such rich data from that because we just gave students a chance to reflect and share rather than, using a Likert scale on something. It really, really meaningful.
Well, and I think part of just being like the natural component of being human is you want people to listen to you. And you want to be able to have a voice. And it doesn't have to be the loudest voice, but sometimes it's just being able to just say, Dr. Vollmar,
Yeah.
this is what I think is something that's a big deal, because so often it's, what is the old saying? Y'all are going to think of it because I'm a little bit brain dead, but kids are meant to be seen and not heard.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just such a sad thing because there's so much that they bring to the table from their perspective. Yeah.
Right. And I don't know, Carla, if you've heard, I'm trying to remember right now where I read it, because it's certainly not my idea. But this whole idea around the idea of students being seen and not heard, right? How we kill curiosity so by the end of first grade, second grade, we have almost wiped that out of students because we're so oftentimes in the stand and deliver model. And so we're sharing things and the light bulbs start firing and kids' hands start going up to ask questions. And not right now, not right now. Save that question. Like we don't just let the curiosity run and let them be the drivers of where those conversations go. I think it goes along so well with what you just said.
I don't know if it was more, I did read an article about it, and there's a lot coming out now too about, the way to respond, what type of audience you give them, and it's a lot of what we research a lot of times, but it's always interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So Desert Sands, very diverse district, has a lot of amazing work. And I know several employees, they love you. They love your leadership. And so you're also the leader of a bond heavy district right now, right?
Oh,
so,
yeah. We do.
It comes with a big responsibility.
Sure does.
So how does Dr. May-Vollmar personally think about being a steward with the community, students, staff trusting that level?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So the whole idea of building trust, sometimes that seems kind of far reaching, like we know it's important to build trust, but what really does build trust? And there is research that tells us what builds trust. So we know if we're a good communicator, that builds trust. We know if people feel like we care about them, that builds trust. If our behavior is consistent, that builds trust. And if people think we're competent in the work that we're supposed to be doing, right? Those are huge pillars of trust building. And so we think about those a lot as we're working with our community. And one of the things that I've really tried to do since being in this seat is constantly finding new ways to connect. We have 34 buildings, about 27,000 students. That equates to 52,000-ish parents out there, right? Guardians. I can't possibly have dinner with all those people. I would love to, but I can't, right? So I've got to find ways to connect and touch them and talk to them and listen to them in particular, with the bond measure. And so we constantly are trying to do things. We brought in a few parents a little over a year ago, about 100-ish parents, community members, alumni, staff members, just to talk about what are the competencies that we most want our students to have beyond the curricular learning that they get, right? Did kind of a portrait of a graduate. You may have heard of that saying. But we met for a year with these people, listening to what was important to them, what they cared about. The event I went to this morning, it's a Coffee with Kelly event. And we bring out the coffee, bring out some pastries. We invite parents to come. I have a co-host now for these events. So it's either If we're at a secondary school, it's always the ASB president. If we're at an elementary school, it's the PTO president, because those are the people that know people. So they're connectors for me. They connect me. I spent last year, I went to every single PTO meeting and every booster meeting in our district at least once, and just sat with the families and thanked them for the work that they do, because they're our number one volunteers, right? But I get a lot of information there too on what our schools look like and how we should design them. And so, we did just pass the $675 million bond measure, which will take us a decade out in designing schools, which is fantastic. But even in there, we've changed our policies in the last couple of years. So when we get ready to talk about what modernizations we're going to do at a school, we don't have like 3 or 4 people sitting around the table. Like, we bring in whichever school was last modernized, we bring in the principal and teachers and classified people. We bring in the same groups from the school that's going to be modernized. We have the previous school say what went well, what was hard, what did we learn, so that we're teaching these people to be great decision makers, because how often do you modernize a school, right? And so it's not work that people tend to know how to do, but we want them to have a voice. And so we give them what they need so they can have a voice in that process.
Yeah, we always used to say, like, and I briefly told you about my work history, but generally speaking, in most cases, a superintendent will have the opportunity, and it's a small percentage, I think it's like 22% or something, to build or modernize schools when they're in a seat,
Right.
or within their seat. And you think about the 22% of superintendents who have that chance, and you're just going, what a great opportunity you have to shape something
Right.
for the future. But not just that, but the community, right? And you get to support so many different aspects of it that, I get excited about it. It's got to be a lot of work, but I would get so excited about it.
Yeah. It's great work, though. It is great work.
I would imagine, but it's probably hard work too, though. Think about.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And I just listened to you say, I went last year to every PTO meeting that in my district. I heard you say, I met with 100 people. And so my question is you work all day long, and then what the hell do you go all night for PTO meetings and forget about the other stuff that you still have to do, right? So, and I don't know, like, age or anything else, or how far in your career you are, but you also said you started teaching because in your daughter's first grade class, right? And you got it from the perspective of me as an individual, Dr. May-Vollmar. What do I give up to sit in this seat?
Yeah.
I don't know that people realize that, what all of that entails, but too, the thought that goes into it too.
I think it's amazing. I worked, at one point, I was a principal in Fairfield Sassoon Unified, which is very similar size-wise and some of the opportunities and challenges you face. And I thought it was amazing when, the principal, the superintendent, and a couple different cabinet members, et cetera, would come to campus, not for a look at me, but really get engaged and have meaningful conversations with staff, with teachers, with students, get out there, and play Foursquare or whatever. But just, it wasn't a showcase. It was, I want to understand you and I see you. And that's what I hear and read about your work. And so does that guide your work at times? Does that guide your vision when you're able to get out?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll just give you 2 practical examples. So so I'm in year 4 of being a superintendent, right? The first 2 years, it took me, we've got, again, 34 schools, right? So it took me a while to get through them all. But I went to every school and I sat in the staff lounge during lunch. So for a middle school or a high school, that's, an hour, right? In elementary school, it's like 3 hours because they have multiple lunches. But I just sat there and listened to, what do you care about? What's important that we maintain? What can we do better? What are your hopes? What are your dreams? And just listen. And those things became then my marching orders, if you will, for what work we were going to get done. We've had other people continue to do that work in different areas. Right now, my chief business officer is doing that because we just passed this bond measure. So he's going out meeting with people, getting even more input from them. But one of my favorite things that we do is we bring in about 75, 100 students about 4 times a year. And it's the superintendent's advisory panel. And we spend the whole day with them. They are here all day long, and we review policy with them. They give us input into our funding and what we're going to do with it. When we started launching our work in AI 3 years ago, we spent probably a total of 2 full days, if you add up all the hours, just with students, listening to them. What should this look like? How should we roll it out? What are the things you're worried about, you want us to be worried about? So those voices, I will tell you for sure, staff voices, community voices, student voices, they drive our work. Those are how we make our decisions.
That's amazing. The empowerment that fills students with is so important, because many times people that don't work with or around students don't understand how much smarter they are than we give them credit for, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And so a high school student can
Yes.
understand policy. A high school student can drive change. And so the little ones can come up and you can put it into their words. But without that,
Right.
what are we doing?
Yeah. We have to have their voices. Absolutely.
With all those, complex priorities,
Mm-hmm.
how do you kind of create clarity for yourself and for all the people you're leading?
Yeah. So we did, when we first did those campaigns, we did an action plan, right? We take those, you start to hear common themes start to emerge. It's almost like a doctoral research project, if you will, right? And so we just cluster those. So and then I share that feedback with the board, and I'm really grateful for the board that I get to work with. So they give us, in addition to all the things that we just have to get done in a school year, they give us every year 3 board priorities that they're like, these are the top ticket items, right? And thankfully, they don't completely change them every year, because it takes more than a year to steer a ship. But so, for example, this year, our board priorities are academic proficiency. So we started a couple of years ago really focusing on early literacy. And so we've made some great gains, and we added in some deep focus on math this year. So it's that academic proficiency. Our second one is being future focused, and that is a lot of our AI work and our career technical work. And then that third board priority is warm and welcoming environments, right? Making sure that everyone, parents, students, community, staff, everybody feels welcome and a part of the environments that they're in. So those goals get developed because we take those points that we've heard and we've listened, we give the board that information, and then we use it to develop what are those big overarching goals for us for the year.
Yeah. What does a warm and welcoming learning environment mean to Dr. Vollmar? It could be elementary, middle, or high.
Yeah. And I think it's a lot of the same things, just looks a little bit different, right? There's the physical building, right? We want our physical spaces, which is why this bond measure was such a huge win for us and for the community. Because we want our learning spaces to be up to date. We want them to be areas where kids can innovate and create and question. We want them to be clean. We want them to be in good shape. But we want the climate and the culture, right, to be that same way. We want it to be a place where kids feel like they belong. They feel like they make connections. They feel like they're safe. They've got the support that they need to thrive, that it's individualized. It's not a one size fits all. So really making sure that it's a space they want to be at, that they want to come to school.
That goes along with your enlightenment. I like how you have your leadership, your vision, your goals, and then the board alignment, community alignment. And so what does alignment district-wide or even in your eyes or mind feel like when it's working well?
If it's working well, we're making progress towards our goal. So
Right.
we're seeing that needle move. But one of the things that I love our organization so much, I say it all the time, I think we have the best staff, hands down, anywhere. But those board priorities, they get lifted up all the time. So any parent meeting, those get lifted up. Any professional development, they get lifted up. So what happens then is we set those board priorities, and then the individual divisions start to work and they set their priorities, but they align them under those 3 big board priorities. So everyone in the organization, it's not just something that the board says and then we don't talk about it again. Everyone in the organization is building towards those goals. And then we have 4 times a year, we get together and we report out to the board what our progress is in those areas. And we define, not only do we define the goals, you said, what's a warm and welcoming environment look like? we define that when we set the goal and we say, okay, these are going to be the things we're going to measure to make sure that we have a warm and welcoming environment. These are the things we're going to measure towards progress with our career technical education. And we measure it all year long, and we report back to the board what that progress is all year long.
You know, when we work with schools at K-12, it's not just about furniture or design. It's about impact. Our radically student-centered approach puts students at the center of every decision. From that first conversation to the final walkthrough, we're focused on creating spaces that actually work for the kids, the teachers, and the community. So if you're looking to do more than just check a box on your next project, let's talk. Visit K12.com. That's KAY-TWELVE.com and see how we're helping schools transform learning one student at a time. Because at K-12, it's not just about projects and furniture, it's about purpose.
Well, I think I'm going to steal one of Jeff's questions here because you talked about it, right? Like you talked about what you want people to experience in your schools. And I always call it a threshold experience. And I talk about that, or I say that a lot when it's associated with the classroom, you know, the way that a kid feels when they're walking through a classroom, or even a teacher.
Yeah.
But if you've got someone who was visiting your school for the first time and they're walking into any of your spaces,
I love it.
how would you hope that the district reflects the values?
Well, I mean, I would want them to be able to look at what our values are and be like, I saw that, right? I saw teamwork. I saw innovation. I saw people that were caring. I saw people being treated with respect and with kindness, right? But I giggled a little bit because, you know, we talked at the beginning about being radically centered around students, right? And I don't know, do y'all know who the Savannah Bananas are? Yeah. So they're like whoever's listening, right? They're like who the Harlem Globetrotters were to basketball, the Savannah Bananas are to baseball. And their whole methodology, if you will, is fans first. Like if it's not fans first, we don't do it. So they think about every price point of concessions. What's the experience when you get into the parking lot? Not even in the ballpark, in the parking lot. And so we stole some fans first philosophy, if you will, and we have a students first theme in Desert Sands. And we're, you know, really looking at using those pillars. But so what do I want people to feel? I talked about to all of the management team back in August. One of the things that Jesse, the owner, says is, you wouldn't believe. He wants people to say that when they leave a baseball game. You wouldn't believe how clean the bathrooms were. You wouldn't believe the entertainment and what I saw. And so what we talked about is that's what we want from kids and from parents, right? I want parents to leave our schools going, you wouldn't believe how that staff bent over backwards to help us and to make sure that we had what we needed. Or a kid going home at dinner and going, you wouldn't believe what I learned about math today and how I learned it, right? That's that experience that we want, which I think really does, you know, it should reflect those values of students first. We everything we do is about students first. We try.
You know, it's crazy you say that. And Jeff, you may not know this, but K-12, we do initiatives every quarter, and we read the Fans First book.
Oh,
and we have a podcast recording with Jesse Cole.
Oh,
so we had her go to Arizona. Kevin Stoller and I live in Arizona, and they came. So we all went to a game, had the whole experience.
I love it.
But ultimately became stewards of the exact same thing, because you look at it from the standpoint of what do you want? And we can look at it from like, you're our customer, right?
Right.
You're a customer.
Yes.
But the reality is that the students are the customers,
are.
and they have a fans first experience as you're going through your process of whatever you're doing in the school.
Right.
You're always going to have the experience of you would not believe what happened when I went to whatever school it
Oh, yeah.
is, right?
Yeah.
So it's that you say that.
I love that. Yeah, it's so neat too, because so one of their pillars, right, is eliminate friction, right? What are those friction points for people that are coming to a game? How do you just get rid of it? And so we tweaked their pillars a little bit. And so one of ours was eliminate barriers, because we tend to, trying to do good work, we unintentionally put up these barriers, right? And so what's been great this year, I can't tell you how many times I've overheard staff members talking to each other, and a staff member saying, that's not removing a barrier. We're creating a barrier. We can't do that. That's not a good decision.
Yeah.
I'm like, yes.
That's
You're like,
fantastic.
preach.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, we do need to write Jesse Cole email because his barrier is that his dang tickets always sell out. Like,
Okay,
you
I
can't even
can't
get
get tickets
them.
to that game.
No.
I've been on the wait list for I don't know how long. So yes, come on,
It's a problem to have, though. I
it
think.
is a good problem. It is.
Yeah.
They're doing some good work. Yeah, for
So
sure.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You just talked about, walking in maybe to a staff room or something. When you have those student quorums, forums, whatever you want to call them,
Yeah.
what did the students say that may have shifted your thinking? You were here after a couple of years of those sessions.
I think one of the things that stands out the most to me is when we were talking to them on, just give practical example, we were talking with them about AI. And we did this, we call it a gallery walk, where we put the kids at stations around the room and we pose some questions to them. We chart their answers, and then they all walk around looking at each other's questions and answers. So we're doing that kind of experience. And one of the stations, we said, what do you want teachers to know? Now, this is like several years ago. It's still probably the most talked about part of AI in education, but the idea of cheating, right, is really on the forefront of everyone's minds. We said, what do you want your teachers to know? And this student, man, if I could just give him a mic. And so he said, I just would want my teacher to know if we had authentic work that we had to do in class, and they had samples of that, and then we had assignments that we had to do at home, they can compare the two and tell if we're cheating. I mean, if we're doing real authentic work, they're going to know. They don't have to worry about whether or not we are. They would know. And I was like, mic drop for this kid. Yes. But those words from the kids, we really used those as are we on the right track or not? And they just really, right, they affirmed us. And then they drove us in some other directions too, right? They talked about one of the things we hadn't even thought about. They said, our teachers are telling us we can't use AI, but they use it and we know, and they don't even tell us that they're using it. And we know they are. And we were like, we need to be more transparent. And we need to have a conversation about, why can the adults use it, but the kids can't? That's another barrier, right? Let's figure out how.
Well, is it trust, right? Like,
Right.
I don't trust you to use this tool, but I'm going to use this tool in what I do for you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I always think it's trust, right?
Yes, totally.
That's underlying of a lot of things.
Yeah.
If we were to have walked in your classroom when
Mhm.
you first couple of years,
Yeah.
and then if Dr. Kelly May-Vollmar was a teacher today and we walked into her classroom, what would have shifted, and perhaps what would you have kept even
Yeah.
from those days? Because I know you've only been, teaching 10 years because you're, in your early 30s. So,
It's so interesting. So when I was a teacher back in the day, right, I told my principal one time, I'm like, you bring the superintendent in my classroom, and I know it's not on purpose, but every time you bring her in, it's like chaos in here. Because I really, really leaned into hands-on learning, project-based learning, lots of dialogue, lots of discussion. So there was very little sitting in rows, me at the front of the room kind of stuff. And so I would hang on to that, because as much as, and my principal was great. He was like, it's controlled chaos. Like if you stand where the kids are and listen to them, it's, they're not goofing off. They're on task. They're on topic. They're asking great questions. So even though it may look a little, wild, they're doing what we want them to do, right? So I would definitely hold on to that. I would say now I know a lot more about getting better directions. I gave this assignment one time. I called my principal in to look at it because it was just really funny. The kids made these PowerPoints. They're supposed to be about life cycles. And it was, they just didn't know enough to do the assignment I had given them to do. I had misgauged that, but one of them was so funny. I still have it on flash drive. The dating life of monkeys. That was their life cycle report. So anyway, yeah, I'd use a lot more strategies that I know how to use today than I did back then.
In your position as a superintendent, you're often faced with pushback and then embrace criticism, right? And so how do you stay steady in the face of criticism? And then how do you not overly get too excited in the face of, honoring, cheering, embracing?
Well, so a few things, right? One is I have this picture in my office. It's a roller coaster, and it's there on purpose because that's the job, right? In any given day, you could have these really high experiences and these really low experiences. And so I just have that there as a reminder for myself. I also really try to remember that these are, at the end of the day, right, these are people's children. And so when they call and there are criticisms, they really are just no matter how it comes out, no matter how it sounds, they're advocating for their kids, which I advocate for their kids. So I want them to add. So I really try to not, get caught up in the tone or the approach and just listen to what it is that they want and what it is that they need and try and get them what they need. But I will tell you, this is really helpful. I do a lot of work around emotional intelligence. And I think that optimism is low in our world today, right? It's down a little bit. And so there are ways, I know I need optimism in my job to do exactly what you just talked about, right? Like not get too caught up on the highs and not do too down on the lows. So there are three things I try to remind myself of. One is this is just a moment in time. So if something's bad, it's not going to be bad forever, right? We'll get through it. It's a moment in time. The other thing I try to remind myself is that it's a thing that's bad. Not all things are bad. This is a thing that's bad, right? That gives me good perspective. And the other is just that I have agency there. I can do something about whatever it is that I think is bad. I'm not a victim that has no, power or ability. I may not be able to change everything I want, but I can change some things. And so that thought process really helps me and keeps me kind of grounded in the right things.
Yeah, I also think too in your role, you oftentimes see your decisions are made, right, based on what you believe the need is and in the best interest of your community. And so to know that you're doing it the right way, sometimes people just feel it's about them. It's not about you.
Right, right.
And as you said that, I'm just like, it's most of the time about someone's uncomfortable with something. Someone, they didn't necessarily get what they wanted. Maybe it might be a little bit more difficult. They might have additional, whatever it might be, but oftentimes it's about them and it's not necessarily about you. And so it's just kind of like, let me hear you.
Yeah, exactly.
Figure that. Yeah.
This too shall pass. That's my mom's all-time favorite saying.
She's right.
Yeah.
I say that to my kids. They get so frustrated with me, Jeff.
We don't want to hear that.
No, they're like, what does that even mean? Like, what does that mean? Because it's not fast. It's right now.
Right now. It's happening to me. It's ruining my life.
So, Dr. Vollmar,
Yeah.
let's get back to our the RSC, the
Yes.
fun,
Love it.
radically student-centered. What does it mean? How does it guide your work, or what are your thoughts around it?
Well, I mean, we talked a lot about, right? Like it means kids have to have a voice. They've got to be front and center. They can't be the recipients of all the decisions that we're making. But I think the pillars we chose with our students first theme, I think really defines it. So for us, it's removing barriers, right? We want to remove any barriers that are in the way, igniting engagement, getting students so they're excited and they're engaged. We have a student board member on Tuesday night at our board meeting. He was ending his term and he's been so engaged. And so I just took a few minutes to say, thank you for being so engaged. But to everyone listening and watching, be this engaged. Like this, we want you to, he was questioning us in a great way, respectfully, wanted data from us. Like he was helping drive decisions that were good for kids. So igniting that engagement, creating spaces where kids can innovate always. We always want that coming from them. Cultivating those connections is really, really key. And then empowering them to act like that. For us, those pillars are really what it is to be radically student-centered.
I love it.
That's phenomenal. So when Dr. Kelly May-Vollmar's tenure is complete, and you reflect, what is the hope that the amazing community of Desert Sands will say about you and how you led?
Oh my goodness. That's a deep question, right? If I can change literacy rates, that would be a good one. I would love that for sure, which we are, but right. Kids got to read. That's like the foundation of everything we do. You know what? If people have felt cared for, they have felt respected, they have felt inspired, that's a great legacy for me. I want people to feel like they just were treated with great dignity for the human beings that they were, no matter what our interaction was and no matter what the circumstances were, that they felt like they were in a place where somebody cared and someone appreciated them and helped them to be the best version of themselves. That would be awesome.
Fantastic.
So if you were to say, not like what my success looks like, right? But if you were to think and have an opportunity to say to people who our audience is pretty much people who design, construct, build, plan schools.
Yeah.
And equipped, because we equipped. But if you had a message to say to people, right, to our community,
Yeah.
what would it be? Like, if you had one thing that you could just be like, get your head out of your tushy, we need to start doing this right now. Like, there has to be something, because I mean, you're enough down the track to know that there are things, right?
Right.
And change is hard, but what would if you wanted to leave one important nugget, what would it be?
Right. Okay, I would say, this is what I would say. I would say push the schools that you're working with, right, to bring you the right connectors. Because the mistake that we made early on in some of our modernizations is we did that thing where we had just a few people around the table. So the tech people would talk about what the tech specs needed to be, right? We talk about what furniture needs to be. We'd talk about, room configuration and what kinds of rooms. And we talked about all that stuff, but who wasn't in the room was the people using the rooms. And so I would say push the people you're working with to get the people around the table that are actually going to be in the rooms, the students, the teachers, that you need those voices when you're making decisions, because they're the customer, to your point earlier, right? They're the ones using it. And so we need the people that have all the district level information that's necessary, but that voice can't be absent.
No. And you're right. It often is, when you're sitting there. And I think so often the squeaky wheels, you have facilities who are like, don't do that. And then, safety and security, don't do that. And you're just like, hey, guys, you're just killing my vibe here.
Right? Exactly. Right. Exactly.
Following her work is next. So we want to thank you, not only for spending time with us and our listeners today, but for the amazing deep work that you do and how you genuinely care about your people, like your tribe, right? And it goes without saying the work you're doing is changing lives. So it's pretty cool.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for what you do. I mean, we couldn't do the work that we do without people like you doing the work that you do. So thank you so much. And thanks for having me today. This was really fun. And anytime I get to talk about my people, I'm happy. They're fantastic.
Everyone, take a listen and share your learning and love and your kids' first vision.
Nice.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The Better Learning Podcast is produced by Matt Rogers and edited by Kelly Jones. The views and opinions shared on this podcast are those of the individual speaking and do not necessarily represent the perspectives of their affiliated companies, organizations, or associations.